Liberals have 20 questions for conservatives, and I'm going to answer them coming up next. So, back in 2017, town hall columnist John Hawkins asked liberals to give him questions that he could answer directly and honestly in a column. Liberals, to their credit, obliged, and we now have a long list of questions that, in my opinion, kind of betray the thinking of the far left. So, I'm going to give answering these same questions a shot and explain why I think that the left is so fundamentally wrong in their entire worldview at the same time. This ought to be interesting, so stay tuned. Do Republicans honestly believe voter fraud is a real issue and not just a blatant excuse to suppress minority vote? Please provide proof. Okay, see, I don't care. We do have plenty of examples where voter fraud has occurred, but even if we didn't, taking steps to prevent the law from being broken is not a bad thing. What is a bad thing is treating minorities like they're idiots, which is exactly what the left does constantly. And there's a video that I saw not too long ago where someone went and interviewed black people and asked them if they have IDs, if they knew how to get IDs, if they could afford to get IDs, and every single solitary one of them had them and was actually offended that anyone would suggest otherwise. So here's a couple of quick clips out of that video, but I'll link to the whole thing in the description. It doesn't disenfranchise anyone except the people who have no business whatsoever voting in the first place. Liberals are idiots.
I'm Ami Horowitz, and I'm here in Berkeley, California to find out if voter ID laws suppress the black vote. Do you have an opinion on voter ID laws?
Yeah, they're usually pretty racist and they're bad.
I think voter ID laws are a way to perpetuate racism.
Would you go as far as say those laws are racist?
For sure.
Do you think it suppresses the African American vote?
Definitely.
Tell us how.
Because they're less likely to have state IDs.
Minority voters are less likely to have the kinds of IDs that have been described or required.
I think that's harder for black people to go online.
Well, I feel like they don't have the knowledge of how it works.
Now I'm here in East Harlem to ask black people their thoughts on what you just heard. Do you have ID normally? You carry ID around?
Yes, I have state ID.
Do you carry ID?
Yes, I do.
Do you know any black person who doesn't carry ID?
No. Everyone that I know has an ID. Why would they think we don't have ID?
That's a lie. Why would they say that?
Do you have ID?
Yes.
Because I have my ID and my friends have their ID, so like, we know what we need to carry around.
Everybody that I know have ID. Like, that's one of the things you need to walk around with New York with, an ID.
Do you know any black adult who does not have ID?
No, I don't.
Is it a weird thing to even say that?
Yes, it is.
What is this, some type of trick candy cameras?
I know, right? That's the only thing I brought with me.
Those are legit IDs. I heard a lot also that black people can't figure out how to get to the DMV.
Really?
What does that say to you?
I know it's that. It's on 25th Street.
Do you know where the DMV is around you?
It's on 125th Street and 3rd Avenue, I believe.
You know how to get there?
Yeah.
Would you have a problem getting there if you had to get there?
No.
I know these sound like silly questions. You know how to get to the DMV?
Of course.
You know where it is?
Yes.
You can get there?
Uh-huh.
No problem.
No problem.
Just checking.
Okay.
And I also heard a lot that black people, especially poor black people, have no access to the internet, can't figure out how to use the internet.
That's just stupidity, honestly. Everybody has access to the internet. Even a little kid can figure out how to work the internet.
I had access to the internet for years.
You know how to use it properly, right?
Exactly. I do it at work. So, of course, I know how to use it. My kids know how to use it. They all have iPads, iPods, whatever.
Your phone has data?
Mm-hmm.
You can actually
Unlimited.
Unlimited data.
Mm-hmm. I use my phone as a hotspot.
What does that say to you for the people who have this perception of black people?
They're pretty much ignorant. That's what my thought process on.
Why are conservatives anti-progress? We're not. We just don't agree with you on what you think is progress. Progress, as far as I'm concerned, is improving society for the vast majority of people in the vast majority of ways. To the left, though, it's making the tiniest minorities happier while ruining it for everyone else. and they continue to seek out smaller and smaller and smaller segments of the population to cater to, and when they can't find anyone who's actually oppressed, they simply make oppression up. I'm sorry, but you can't make everyone happy. Progress is improving society. It's making people smarter and more rational and better able to fend for themselves. It's not handing out free money in some kind of socialist wonderland. If anyone's anti-progress, it's the left. If you're a Christian, how do you reconcile Good Samaritan / Sermon on the Mount with Trump denying Arab children safe passage? Well, I'm not a Christian, so I can't really answer this as asked, but it's not Trump's job to guarantee anyone safe passage anywhere. This is all emotion over intellect nonsense. Our job is to allow in immigrants that will benefit America. Not the immigrants, America. I really don't care about the immigrants. I care if we're getting the best and brightest people from around the world, people who will fit into our culture and adopt our values and make us stronger and better as a nation. Beyond that, if they have problems, those problems are theirs, not ours. I'm sorry if that hurts your fifis. Why do so many people say Trump isn't racist, or say they voted for him despite that and feel okay with it? What exactly has Trump done that has shown him to be an actual racist? Because no matter how many times liberals throw this around, all they've done is show that Trump isn't a liberal. And that's a good thing because the liberals are the real racists. Trump opposes unlimited Muslim immigration, which I totally agree with him on, but Islam is a religion, not a race, so the label simply doesn't apply. But because liberals are such racists, concerned only with people's skin color and not the content of their character, they will throw around insults like racist and misogynist and sexist because it has an emotional impact, not because it's demonstrably true. They really ought to try honesty once in a while, but I wouldn't be holding my breath. Doesn't the president alarm you? What do you think about mass resignations and attempts to silence agencies? No, it really doesn't bother me a bit. In fact, all of the resignations tell me that Trump is being effective. He was elected as a political outsider that will shake up the status quo, and that's exactly what he's done. It's what he was hired to do. The political machine has stagnated and become corrupt, even the Republican political machine, and a lot of people who've languished in public office for years and years and years need to be ousted so that fresh blood with new ideas can be brought in. And the left doesn't like that. Hell, the right doesn't like it either, but they're almost all career politicians who've spent their lives on the public dole, and they don't want to be held accountable for doing the job that the American people need them to do. The more of this dead weight Trump can jettison, the better. How do conservatives square a pro-life abortion policy with persistent attacks against the welfare state? Now, again, I'm not against abortion, so this really isn't applicable to me. Besides, most hyper-religious Republicans aren't pro-life, they're anti-abortion. They don't really care about life, they care if you get born. Then, they really don't give a damn what happens to you. But hey, as an actual conservative rather than a religious shill, I oppose the welfare state vehemently. Welfare should be restricted to those who are most desperately in need, and then only for the least amount of time that it takes them to get back on their feet and self-sufficient once again. If you ruin your own life, that's your problem. It's not society's job to carry you around for the rest of your life because you screwed up. We can help with your immediate concerns, but long term, get a job, be responsible, take care of yourself, because we shouldn't be expected to do it for you. If conservatives believed in the marketplace of ideas and observed voter fraud is low, wouldn't they want everyone to vote? Well, no, because everyone isn't allowed to vote, nor should they be. The only people who get to vote are people who are legally permitted to do so, and that means people who are citizens, either born or naturalized, and no one else. And you notice who's trying to get illegals to vote? Liberals. Why? Because they know that they'll be the ones who are likely getting those votes. This isn't about doing what's right. It's not about defending and supporting the Constitution like these political windbags swore to do upon election. It's about winning, no matter the cost, because they're desperate for power. Everyone who is legally permitted to vote can do so. I encourage them to cast an educated ballot. If you're not voting, or you're not able to vote, then stay the hell away from the polls. Why are they so against an investigation into Russian ties with Donald Trump? If there was any evidence whatsoever, then sure, go ahead and investigate. But this isn't about an investigation, it's about a witch hunt. You don't see the left demanding an investigation of the DNC fraudulently fixing the nomination for Hillary, do you? I mean, there's tons more evidence for that. The head of the DNC even admits it happened. But Russian collusion? Nothing. Crickets. It's a fantasy because the idiots on the far left can't deal with the reality that they lost. Come up with evidence that the Russians were involved, and I'll be the first one to support an official investigation. Let me know when you can produce any of that. What is up with the obsession some conservatives seem to have with cuckoldry? I'm not sure where this is going, to be honest. I can think of two things. First, lots of conservatives point out that Hillary, someone who was running on women's rights and equality and power, her husband is one of the biggest cheating sleazeballs around. I can't imagine why any woman in her right mind would stay with a man who has so publicly and repeatedly violated their marriage vows, but I don't understand women who get beaten remaining with the man who kicks them in the teeth either, so who knows? In this case, it's really a power thing. Bill Clinton, no matter what a scumbag he is, his name carries political clout, and Hillary needs that clout, so she sticks around, even if the marriage is probably little more than a sham at this point, so there's that. The other possibility is the online penchant to call people cucks, which is something almost always leveled at the far left by the alt-right who are not actual conservatives, who aren't even liked by actual conservatives. But since the left tends to be overly influenced by social media, and they tend to be very young, and that's probably why, maybe that's where they're getting this nugget of stupidity from. I really don't know. Why don't conservatives seem to give a damn about climate change? Well, we do, so far as it's proven to be happening for the reasons that the left claims, and that there's any way we can reasonably do anything to fix it. But there's a lot of reasons to question exactly what's going on, and why it's happening, and why the left seems to have no end of ways to profit from it. Everything from carbon credits to high-priced conferences with proceeds vanishing into liberal pockets. It's usually good advice to follow the money, and the people pushing the narrative the hardest are the ones who stand to profit from it the most. In fact, there seems to be pretty solid evidence that most climate change is caused by things that are entirely beyond our ability to change. Now, that's not saying that we shouldn't be concerned with the environment and do our best to counteract human damage to the world. But far too many on the left are taking a Chicken Little approach and demanding extreme measures without showing that those measures are either effective or necessary. They have to do a lot better than that. What is the conservative view of Trump's infrastructure plan? Good? Bad? Socialism? Alright, well, I'm not really in favor of it, but I don't know that there's any workable solution because the American attention span tends to be so short-sighted. It took decades to get into this mess. It's going to take decades to get out of it, but no one wants to put in the long-term work and sacrifice to fix the problems that exist. Because politics doesn't work that way. Everyone has to solve the problems within 4 years or less, and if they fail, as any president from any side would fail in this case, then it's not worth expending political capital on. The problem isn't Trump. The problem is the American voter. If we want to rebuild and maintain our infrastructure, we have to spend a lot less money on things that we're currently squandering it on, and I agree, the military is a big part of that problem. But so too is welfare and a lot of traditionally leftist programs. Money doesn't grow on trees for either side. Where is the line for you? What action could Trump take that it would ensure you'd fight against him and his supporters? Well, since I honestly don't support Trump in the first place, I don't know. He was the lesser of the two evils, barely. If someone better comes along next time, they'll get my vote, but they have to be a lot more centrist than most candidates from the Democrats, so I'm not holding my breath. The Republicans, they're really not conservative anymore. No party is, but they're marginally better than the socialist nonsense that comes out of the political left. I didn't expect much from Trump, and I still don't. But at least he's keeping another Obama from occupying the office. Do you still believe Trump's business conflicts won't be a problem after seeing the countries included and excluded in the ban? Now, this is an older issue since these questions came up in 2017, but it has to be noted that it wasn't Trump that came up with these nations that are supposed to undergo additional scrutiny. It was Obama. But the left doesn't want to talk about that, do they? Because, honesty and all. But I absolutely agree that no one from any country ought to be allowed onto our shores until we know that they're safe. I don't care where they're coming from. It could be Canada for all I care, and I still want them to undergo credible vetting before stepping foot across the border. And this isn't paranoia. We already know, for instance, that Muslim terrorists have gotten into Mexico because it's very easy to just walk across the border illegally to attack us from inside than it is to jump on a plane and come over from Iran. We have a right to know who we're allowing into our country, and like I said, immigration is for our benefit, not for the immigrant. Anyone who doesn't like that, they're welcome to go elsewhere. Free press is fundamental to democracy, so why do Republicans only trust media that flatters the current administration, much like state-run media? Well, I think all mainstream media sucks. Fox News is every bit as bad as CNN. And the reason for this is because all mainstream media exists to make money, not to tell the truth. So they all have fake news of one kind or another that caters to their audience, so they'll keep watching and that sweet, sweet advertising money will keep rolling in. There is no journalistic integrity in the mainstream anymore. No reporters are saying, hey, we're only going to tell the truth, and if you won't let us tell it, we quit. It's not about the truth. It's about presenting a narrative, and we saw that with the Russian collusion stories from back in the day, where every single liberal news outlet was constantly running these stories. It's why no one should ever believe anything that comes out of the mainstream media without independent vetting. These people have done themselves in. Why should we allow Bannon to wield power and influence? Alright, Bannon isn't even an issue anymore, so I really don't know how much of this question I should even bother with. So I'm really not going to. This video is going to be long enough as it is. How can a conservative square the funding request for the wall with past demands that spending be offset elsewhere? Personally, I don't think the government should be doing the vast majority of the things that it does. The Constitution requires that the government, as one of its primary jobs, defends the nation and its citizens. Building the wall, and I'm not really a proponent of a physical wall so much as I am of sealing off the borders and economy in other ways, but whatever we do, it's part of the job the government exists to do. So we ought to cut a ton of money out of the budget somehow, things that the government has no business doing in the first place. And if you want to build a wall, I guess at least it creates jobs for a while, so that's a benefit. It would be easier to just end all sanctuary cities, stop illegal aliens from getting jobs, from being able to buy or rent property, from being able to use public services, attend schools, etc. I'd much rather see illegals self-deport than put up a wall. But that's just me. Also, does it bother you that tiny numbers of richest people have the same wealth as bottom half of entire world pop? English. Try it. Okay, not remotely. Why should it? These people have earned that wealth. Why shouldn't they have it? It ought to bother people how many lazy, stupid, ignorant idiots there are at the bottom who never do anything useful or worthwhile with their lives and just have their hands out for money from the government. But the left never wants to talk about that, do they? Why do conservatives assume that black people's views on society are a result of brainwashing by the left rather than by your own experience? Now, I'll be honest here, and this will piss people off. There shouldn't be any such thing as quote-unquote black people's views. There should be people, not black people, not white people, not brown people, people. Your views should not be based off the color of your skin, and if they are, there's something seriously wrong. But this is what the left has given us, the view that black people have to all think the same way because they're black. And the second a black person reveals that they're a conservative, well, they're called an Uncle Tom and run out of town on a rail. And this is disgusting, because the left have bought the black vote, specifically by handing out free money and telling blacks that they're just not responsible for their own failures. It's all whitey's fault, and anyone who tells them different is a despicable racist. Sorry, the despicable racists are the liberals who are telling them that blacks are too dumb to be responsible for themselves. It's the soft racism of low expectations that is a hallmark of liberalism. And it's the same thing that's true of feminism when you really think about it. Women can't make it on their own without the constant attention and support of the political left. That's why they want quotas. Never mind fair competition, they have to give their pet groups a leg up because they've spent so much time telling them that they can't succeed on their own that unfortunately it started to be true. A lot of these experiences are self-fulfilling prophecies. They expect it to be true, so they set up situations where it's true, only so that they can get their biases confirmed. And when you think about it, it's really just sad. Is there any point at which the electoral college / popular vote split would become a concern? Well, it's really only a concern for the left because the electoral college forces them to do things that they wouldn't otherwise do. The whole purpose of the electoral college was to make candidates get out of the big cities and engage with the small towns and the common folk. The left doesn't want to do that. It's a waste of resources for them because the vast majority of their voters come from big cities and major population centers. They would rarely leave the coasts if it wasn't for the electoral college. And that leaves a huge number of Americans effectively unrepresented by the Democrats, and eliminating the electoral college would just make it worse. Why are you more comfortable with banning foreigners than banning assault weapons? Because foreigners have no explicit right to be here, whereas we have a constitutional right to firearms. Again, immigration is for our benefit, not the benefit of the immigrant. The Second Amendment gives law-abiding citizens the right to own firearms. So there really is no comparison here. And let's be honest, assault weapons is just a wedge issue to get all guns eventually banned. That's really what the far left wants to happen, and they're not really that shy in saying so. If they ban so-called assault weapons, and let's be honest, they really have no good definition of what it even means, then they will just shift targets and the cycle will go on and on and on until we're all left defenseless. That's really the goal here. We all know it, and they're not even keeping it a secret. And once we're all defenseless, then having a liberal socialist government takeover is pretty easy. So no, just no, and I'm not even a gun owner. So those were the questions. What did you think? Did you think they were valid questions, or did you, as I did, see the fundamental problems in the whole of the liberal worldview that would even allow them to come up with such ridiculous questions as these? Because these questions were stuffed full of racism, authoritarianism, jealousy, paranoia, and the desire to turn the nation over to the enemy in a delusional defense of tolerance for the sake of tolerance. This is really why I find liberalism, at least extreme versions thereof, to be so distasteful. They don't want people to be self-sufficient and be able to think for themselves. They want them weak, stupid, and beholden to the government for all of their needs. They don't want anyone to be able to disagree. That's why they push speech codes and hate speech legislation where they conveniently control the definition of what hate speech is and what it isn't. Ultimately, their goal, whether they recognize it or not, is to make us all weak. It's to make us all dependent. It's to place themselves as our ideological overlords, where they get to decide what is good and what is bad, what is acceptable and what is not. Where liberalism is little more than a religion that everyone is forced to subscribe to, not at the butt of a gun, but in the court of public opinion, forced into compliance through shame, not reason. Like religion, the left has no rational defense for their positions. It's all emotion. It's all feels over reals. And they want to keep anyone who thinks they're nuts silent. Didn't we see this with the Catholic Church for hundreds of years? If you dared to disagree, you were ruined or worse, dead. We've seen where that road goes, and we must never ever go down it again. This was 20 good reasons why we can never allow it, and I, for one, never, ever will.